And good morning. And I hope we're live. So it's all right. Good morning, everybody. I'm having a bit of a morning this morning. I've had a little bit of a rush. But this morning, we're going to calm down because I love my Friday mornings. And I'm going to have a chat with Ruth about warm and cool colours. So, what we're doing warm and cool colours in Art Hub, and it was inspired a little bit. Obviously, we're doing summer colour, so it's a general theme, but it was inspired a little bit by this painting. The fact that I've started to experiment sometimes where I'll do warm colours first, and then I'll do a layer of cool colours. And I find it quite interesting, these contrasts and how you can sort of play with it. So
Mhm.
this isn't and I just so I'll talk about this more later, but in case you are not aware, we'll talk a little bit about warm and cool. But first of all, um, obviously I'm a little bit all over the place this morning, but we are Art Alchemy, and I'm Debbie Chatfield. This is Ruth Egon, and we run Art Hub together. So.
Yeah, we run an online art community. So, in our community, we talk about lots of different things in relation to art. And I think warm and cool colours is a good one because quite often people get a bit confused, don't they?
I think it is confusing. We'll get to really confusing towards
Yeah.
the end of this
Yeah,
podcast.
and a bit overwhelmed as well in terms of like how to use colour, what colours work together. So it is helpful, isn't it? I think to understand the warm and the cool, and whether you want to. I think it's about like whether you want to create contrast in your work, whether you want to create a particular feeling. Because
Mm,
previously we did a podcast, didn't we, on like the meaning of colour and what like you associate colour with, and I think the same works for warm and cool, doesn't it?
mm.
Gives a
It
kind of
does, because you can actually create a whole mood around colour.
yes, yeah.
Mm. But
And
I'm quite enjoying this layering of colour as well.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
allowing the warmth to peek through the cool and
yes,
stuff like that.
yeah.
That's quite interesting. Um, and also just making for an interesting painting, because if you've got contrasts as opposed to um, everything just being harmony, the same. Harmony's lovely in certain paintings if that's the mood that you want to create. But a lot of the time for interest, contrast can
Mhm.
be really good.
Yeah,
And so having warm and cool colours and being aware of it really is it's that awareness.
yeah,
So I did bring a colour wheel just to give people an idea of what we mean by warm and cool colours. I'm going to put yellow at the top, even all right, it's just trying to. There we go. I just saw my colour wheel out. This is a little bit how I feel this morning. I haven't quite. Okay, so I don't know why, but I always like yellow at the top. Traditionally, it would have been that they drew the colour wheels like that. So that's why I have it in my head.
yeah,
Yellow at the top. And you can see here that things that we associate with warmth, like the reds and the yellows, yeah, they're fairly obvious because they're going to be warm colours. And
Mhm.
something that's really obvious is like orange, it's between yellow and red.
Mhm.
It's always a warm colour. And when I say always, yeah,
Yeah,
okay, I'll
most
get to
time.
that later. Okay. So then you've got the other side of the wheel. Now, I'm not quite sure. Where do you think it starts to go into cool colours? So that green looks quite cool and
Yeah,
blue.
I would say that
Moving
green. I would
round.
say the yellow green up there looks more sage and warm to me, but the one after
Yeah,
that
yeah,
green, you start going into the blues. And I
yeah,
always think blues traditionally of like being a cooler colour.
yeah. And the red violet there is starting to warm up again.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think it's fairly obvious from an instinctive point of view how that feels. It's just that there's a lot of these areas where they start to get a little bit confusing.
yeah.
And then there's another thing that you want to think about is, say for instance, you're looking at I'm going to do it over here. Say, for instance, we're looking at sort of these reds, which is warmer and which is cooler. And this is where which of these blues is warmer and cooler.
Mm,
And blues is a really odd one because even amongst the artist community, artists just don't agree
yeah, yeah.
which are warm and which are cool because they do it in different ways. So I always taught people to not worry too much about whether an individual colour is warm or cool, but think about the relative colour compared to
Mm,
what it is around it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose that's the other thing as well is when you think about comparative colour, you can put two colours next to each other and it will change the what the other colour looks like as well, won't it? So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
acts on the colour that it's sitting next to.
So if you put, and that's really, really weird because it also changes the feel of the tonal value as well. Have you ever done that? We'll have to do that one time where we just talk about tonal value. And then you can literally, if you put like sort of a cover over it and just open up a couple of holes so you can see colours behind. Sometimes they'll look the same, but when you take it across it away and you see the relativeness, they look very different.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've always felt that the most the easiest way to do is to know which way colours lean, which is slightly different from warm and cool.
Mm,
So if you've got a green, is it a yellowy green or is
mm,
it a bluey green? That starts to help you. And if it's a bluey green, then it's sort of a cooler
yeah,
green.
yeah. And it really helps with colour mixing as well, doesn't it? So when you get beyond using colours just straight from the tube and you start mixing more nuanced colours, you can think about how you're going to make that green warmer. So you might need a little bit of red in there to give it
Mm,
that warm kind of undertone colour
mm,
to it.
mm.
Or if you,
Yeah, and once you start understanding these things, you'll realize that sometimes, because we often do this, let's just have a limited palette thing. And when you do the limited palette, sometimes when people are beginners, they think, I can't actually mix this colour. And I'll look and I'll go, no, you won't be able to mix that colour. So if you want to have a really strong orange, for example, and you've got a red that's leaning towards blue, and
Mhm.
you've got a yellow that's leaning towards blue,
Mhm.
it's going to be very hard to have a strong orange because orange is just yellow and gosh, red. My head this morning. so so with so because you've got that bluey thing, you've actually got three colours in there. And once you start getting those three primaries into colours, you can't get the same sort of strong saturated orange. You wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah,
And so people, when they first start, it's not when you're painting, you do not just have one red,
yeah,
one yellow.
yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Millions of colours, aren't there? Billions, probably.
Yeah, yeah. Which I absolutely love. So I'm not complaining that there's millions of colours because I just, yeah. You love colour too. You talk
Yeah,
to
yeah.
artists
I
who
do.
love colour.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I love being able to kind of play around with colour as well. And like you say, getting that contrast for me is like important. I think it makes colours pop a lot more if you've got contrast next to
Mm.
each.
Yeah. And even more so if you've got some colours where it has been slightly desaturated. And what I mean by that is, you've got an orange with a bit of blue in, yeah, and
Yeah.
then that's next to a colour that's very, very saturated because it hasn't got all three primaries in it. Then you're getting, I'm seeing some of the colours behind you actually, Ruth, and you're doing that very nicely, to be honest.
Yeah, at the moment I'm sort of trying to leave some of the painting more like loose and kind of fluid oil paint rather than laying it up too thick. And I'm enjoying having that contrast, as you said, like more kind of desaturated colours next
Mm.
to like the bolder colours.
Mm.
Having a
I always love it when I see it in other people's work, and I've always painted quite bright, and then I'm really working on it at the minute, but it's actually quite difficult.
It is quite difficult, isn't it, to kind of hold yourself back, I think, and
Yeah.
more, I suppose, tentative about it. I
Mm.
think the interesting thing is if you do, it has more of an impact on what's around it and the other colours.
And yesterday, because we had a workshop yesterday, and I was saying to them, don't rush,
Mm,
because it's that you do a layer, then just sit back and just
yeah,
look at it,
yeah.
because it's so tempting just to plow on.
It is. Keep going and keep going and keep going. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that was interesting because yesterday one of the ladies was just like, um, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, you need to just go stand on the other side of the room and look at the painting and just sit. That's what you need to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Which
Yeah,
doesn't feel like you're doing.
yeah, yeah, but it's definitely an important part of the progress, isn't it? To like reflect on what you're doing.
Yeah, it is. It is. Um, I want to touch on blue. I'm not sure whether I want to touch on blue because it feels
Gosh,
like a little bit of a minefield.
yeah, yeah, it is. And there's no like final answer, is there? So we're not going to reach a conclusion, but I think it's interesting to talk about.
Okay, so let's tackle blue. Okay, and I might have a little bit of paper actually as well. So when we get blue, some people will say that a reddy blue is the warm colour
Mm,
because that feels quite intuitive,
mhm,
I think. I think that's what it is. But the colour wheel has sort of been twisted round. Yeah. So the colour is, and I'm going to get a bit nerdy here. Okay. So
mhm.
colour is the you've got your light spectrum,
Mhm,
yeah, and you've got your reds, which are like, I think they're longer wavelengths. I might get it wrong. I might get my nerdiness wrong. And then you're getting shorter and shorter wavelengths to the violet end, yeah, and the blues and all of that. And so when you start to look like that, I'm going to get into a muddle, so I'm not sure that this is. But some people will say that it's the blue green that is the warmer colour.
Mm, yeah.
And this is where I start to I get confused with it, if I'm honest. I don't actually think it matters. I always say it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter for colour mixing. It doesn't matter for relativity when you put a colour next to each other. So I always say that, but it's quite interesting to know why different people think different things.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I'm wondering if it matters.
No, I don't think it does matter. I think people interpret colour differently. I think as well, it's, to be honest, colour's quite a personal psychological thing as well. I think like different colours mean different things to people. Like if you were to say to somebody, I want you to paint um, the beach, that they could choose, their mind might go to some beautiful Caribbean sea. It might go to some rugged landscape, rough sea.
Hmm.
And all of those colours as well, depending on where you are going to be different as well, aren't they? So I
Hmm.
do think it's quite a personal thing about like how you choose to use your colour. And I also think that comes down to like whether you think it's a warm or a cool colour. Um,
Hmm.
there was that whole controversy, wasn't there, around, do you remember that dress where the people saw, was
Hmm.
it gold or was it, what was the other one? Was it blue, gold and blue? People
Yeah, I remember it.
in it. What colour did
Yeah.
you say?
I feel like I saw gold.
I saw gold. Yeah.
Yeah.
But apparently that's to do with the way that your brain interprets how light shines on things
Oh.
and to do with like tonal value. And that's why some people saw blue and some people saw gold, apparently, because that's how your
Oh.
eye works.
But what's really interesting is that people get quite fired up about it as well.
Yeah,
They have a really strong. They said it was a warm blue, and it isn't a warm blue. It's a cool blue, and
yeah,
it's like for me, I'm like, I actually don't think that matters. What matters is how does it mix with another color, or how does it react, or how does it look on a painting?
yeah, yeah, I
I
agree.
would quite like to get my head around the differences properly because I don't think I have, because that's why I'm not explaining it very well. I
Yeah,
do understand where different people are coming from,
yeah.
but I mean, I've also heard somebody describe yellow as the hottest colour.
Mm. But yellow can be quite cool, can't it? If you've got a sort of a lemon yellow, to me, that's quite cool.
Mm,
And personally would, if you asked me what the hottest colour would, I would say red, like a,
yeah. And I think because of that, I tend to think of red violet, of the blue with the violet colours, sort of red violet rather than blue violet. Um, as as yes, I definitely feel like that is the hotter colour.
yeah,
But I do get where people are coming from when they're thinking it's something else. It's just naturally that's what I tend to feel.
yeah,
But again, I don't think it matters
yeah.
too much.
No, no.
We'll probably get a load of comments on this one.
I hope so.
It
I
really
hope
does
it gets
matter.
people thinking because it's interesting, isn't it, the way other people think about colour.
Yeah, and also we'd like you to really explain it. If you say no, this is definitive, this is how it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
I don't think it is, and the reason I say I don't think it is definitive is because there is I've looked on YouTube and there's a lot of different opinion.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's quite interesting.
yeah.
So people are seeing it differently, I think,
Mhm.
possibly. Um, so moving on from that, how do you use it in the paintings then? Do you actually do a warm layer and a cool layer? Do you have a warm layer and a cool palette? Because warm palette and a cool palette, because people work like that as well.
Yeah, they do. I don't work that
Stru in that sort.
in that structured way. I just tend to have all of my colours on a palette and just kind of go for it and mix things up. And I'm a bit more spontaneous than that. Um, Sometimes if I know for sure, like what a lot of oil painters do is they'll put like a base layer on of like a cooler colour beforehand and then build it up if you know that there's going to be a particular tone to that painting or the particular area. But with me, I tend to kind of layer it up slowly. And although I use photographs for my work to paint from, I tend to leave it up to the paint more when it's on about like what colours work well next to each other. So that's quite like a slow process of layering. So I might start off with quite a warm colour and then think, oh no, that needs to like come down and be a bit cooler, or
Mm.
vice versa, because it's next to another colour. So even though I have quite a few references, I tend to paint quite intuitively with the colours.
So do you not have a limited palette at all?
Not really, no, no,
Ah, right, okay,
no.
okay.
I
So I tend to, well, it varies on the painting,
Yeah,
but I will think about the palette differently for the paintings or for a series of paintings. So if it's a series painting, I might have all the same colours. But um, when I'm going out painting, I've been thinking about this split palette idea. So
yes,
the idea of having a cool and a warm
yeah,
of each colour.
yeah,
And I mean, I've done it before, but I think it's quite a nice idea for going out sketching because then you can reach lots of different colours from that,
Yeah.
um, and and choose to. And so I'm quite liking the idea of trying that because I have even more colours in my palettes, but they're tiny. They're like little pans. And I was thinking if I had a split palette, I could use bigger pans so it would feel a little bit more. So
Mm.
I think I'm going to try that.
Yeah, yeah. I do tend to have my colours that I go to that mix well together. So even though I don't have a limited palette, I don't have a lot of pre-mixed colours in my collection. So white's an obvious one that you're probably always going to need in oil colour.
Hmm.
And then I have things like magenta because that's a nice colour to mix with. Um, and I like sort of lemon yellow, so that kind of that cooler yellow to mix with. Um, and then things like ultramarine blue mix well, don't they? So
I
although I,
I used ultramarine a lot. I like phthalo.
yeah,
Um, I think it's the transparencies as well that
yeah,
I'm really, really liking with
yeah.
because it's like got that synthetic transparent.
Do you find, I'm not sure whether it's the same in acrylic, but there's certain colours that have got um a sort of they've got more colour in them, if you know what I mean. So like
Yes,
with the yellows, I have to be quite careful because they take quite a long time to like layer up in
they
oil
do.
colour.
And if you put a dark colour underneath the yellow, so if you're doing a sunset, I was talking to a lady yesterday, and sometimes, and you've done an undercolour,
Yeah,
then it's really hard to get it back
yes,
sometimes to
yeah,
that bright yellow.
yeah,
Because they do have very difficult the coverage is hard. It's hard. And it's not just about transparency because you can actually it there is a slightly different thing, isn't there? Because with blue, your blue might be very transparent, but it still covers better.
yes, yeah, it still has more coverage, yeah.
Yeah. So, but sometimes I would even if I really can't cover, get something white under there and then yeah, I do
Yeah,
that
yeah.
because sometimes you just can't get it to pop.
No, no, and you need that kind of that bright background to bring it
But
back.
I do have an awareness of it because whereas I would say, almost always, no, always really, apart from this one occasion that I'm about to tell you about, cover underneath
Hmm.
because I like it's like creates that harmony, that cohesion. And also, I might not use cool color because you said cool. Sometimes I'll use a warm color, and it's to do with the feeling of the
Mm,
painting. So,
yeah,
or sometimes I'll even go bright underneath, so that and then a complementary contrast. It's
yeah,
still to do with the contrast, but and letting those little bits peep through is quite nice, really. But we did fire and we did a really, really dark background. And when you paint fire, when you're trying to get that real white glow in the center, and if you've put like a really dark color underneath, and then you're trying to get it back, that is so difficult. And it's
yeah,
so much easier if you just leave the fire in the middle
yeah, yeah.
with the white and then build in a different way. So there are occasions where putting a whole undercoat doesn't quite work.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see you because you want to experiment, don't you, with oil paint on top of acrylic. So
Mm.
interesting to see how that works because the other thing with colours and painting is that depends what medium that you're working in as well, doesn't it, as to how you want to layer your colours. Um, like for watercolour, that needs quite a lot of kind of soft layers, doesn't it? Um, and with acrylic, I find it's generally you're working with more opaque kind of colours, aren't you, than you would be with something like a
I'm
watercolour.
not sure I quite agree.
Okay,
But
tell me more.
okay, so yes, you can work with opaque colours, and yes, you can work like dark to light, etc. But I do particularly love glazing and using transparent colours in acrylic as well.
Yeah, interesting.
So yeah, just because I like to it's seeing the layers underneath us. So
Yeah.
I think again it's about contrast, having that both. And that is something I'm also trying to start to work on, where the underlayers I'm not using very much white.
Mm.
Because you can lighten colours with yellows, or you can lighten in a different
It's
way,
very
can't you?
true. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm starting to, I feel like I've got more and more awareness over the years of these different nuances, really.
Mm.
Because it's very hard to do that at the beginning, isn't it?
Mm.
But I always talk about paint qualities.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So, your qualities are your transparencies, your opaqueness, but coverage, I mean, I hadn't really thought of it as a separate quality, but I think you might be right. That's a takeaway from today.
Yeah, yeah.
It's great when me and Ruth talk, 'cause we always have like new things that we discover, don't we?
Just geek out on everything, don't we?
Yeah. What we're not geeking out on is, if anybody ever starts to talk to us whilst we're not actually managing to look at YouTube at the same time as talking to each other. So if anybody is talking to us, they're gonna have to do you know what I mean? I think we should be looking at this.
Yeah, yeah. But as well, like make sure,
Can you see me on or us rather? Can you see it on my YouTube channel?
let me have a look.
We
Should
could be
come up
talking.
with a notification that we're live and
Yeah.
but it doesn't always because algorithms and everything these days.
Yeah, because I feel because what we do is we just go into Zoom, don't we? And bit of
Yeah,
not seaside exactly. Oops. Got the
have a look. Live. I can't see it in live, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going live because I've been in before and it looks like it wasn't live and we were. It's a bit confusing.
Yeah, I think we're live.
I mean, it says on our Zoom that we're live custom streaming, so we should be live.
Yeah, it's just weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're not quite sussed on this.
No, and they're always changing things as well, aren't they? With things like YouTube and Facebook and all the rest of it.
Yeah, yeah. We'll hopefully when you start by the time everybody starts to talk to us whilst we're live.
Yeah. Hi, people. We'll have sussed it by then. We'll be
If
most.
anybody is out there, do put an emoji or something because then we might find it later.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to say. And like if anybody's got any questions, like doesn't necessarily need to be on a Friday when we're live. If you've got anything that you want us to talk about, then please just drop in a comment and let us know. Because yeah, we'd like to kind of cover a lot of different topics. It's interesting to hear what other people are either struggling with or interested in, whatever it might be, art wise.
And if you subscribe to our channels, because we go live every other week. So one week we're in my channel and another week we're in Ruth's channel. So if you subscribe to our channels and you happen to be in YouTube at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning, you'll catch us then.
Yeah, yeah. And if you want to see more of us, we've got a free Facebook group as well, haven't we? That we put little bits in about all things art, and it's a nice little art community. Now it's a private group, isn't it? So it's like I said,
Yeah, and it's a good time to join actually because we're starting to do a little bit more in there, aren't we? So that'll be good.
yeah, yeah, sharing blogs and things like that. So
Mm, mm, yeah. Okay, so is anything else about Warm Cool? Have you got a takeaway? Because I used to like takeaways.
um,
Hmm. You
no,
don't have to
not
have one.
really. No.
Hmm.
Uh,
I think the big thing to think about if you're watching this and you're not sure about whether it's a warm colour or a cool colour, I always advise people to think about the way colours lean. So whether it leans, so if it was a yellow, whether does it lean towards the blue or does it lean towards the red? And I think that by doing that, you'll start to get at least that will help with the colour mixing. So
Yeah.
instead of thinking about warm and cool colours to what as to what to use, and
Yeah.
then from the point of view of warm and cool, from a feeling point of view, then from my perspective, it doesn't matter who's right about whether something's warm or cool. I would have said that you go with how you feel about that colour because it's your feeling that you want to get into the painting, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing that matters is like being able to express that feeling. So
Mm.
I think yeah, that's a really nice way of looking at it. And it means that you don't get bogged down in the technicalities. You just again tuning into that intuition,
Mm.
which me and you think is like really important. I also think with colour mixing, what's a really good exercise to do is actually paint out a colour wheel. It can be a little bit dull, but I must say it really helped me. It's something that they made us do in college, and I think
Yes.
it just helped
I've done a lot of painting colour wheels because I actually,
your colour mixing.
you might think it's dull. I love painting colour wheels, which is a little bit sad. I was going to show you my colour wheel, but I can't see it. That we painted for Art Hub, but I really don't know where it is.
I
So,
think it's a good thing to do if you're feeling like you want to do something with painting, but you're not particularly in the mood to do anything adventurous or exciting or different, and you just want to get your paints out. It can be quite meditative, can't it? Because you're doing
mm,
it slowly and you're slowly bringing in that other colour bit
mm,
by bit and changing
mm.
the colour. So it's quite a nice thing to do when you're in that kind of mood, isn't it?
And actually, you've just brought up the thing that I think is the number one thing that people don't do when they first start colour mixing. They don't take tiny amounts of colour. They
Yeah,
don't, and they overshoot the colour.
yeah, that's
So they
very
try, I mean, I do a colour matching, how to colour match.
yeah,
And what people do is they just get a great big glob of colour and just mix it together, which is all right at the beginning. But if you're trying to tweak a colour, you
yeah.
need to go. If
It's
you've got a blob of colour there, I always go in with my brush at the very side and just
yeah,
lightly
just
touch
have a
it.
little like nip of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that's the number one thing that people, they're a bit heavy-handed when they first start to
yeah.
mix
I
colour.
agree. I agree. And you have to be, like we were saying earlier, you have to be particularly careful around if you've got a yellow base colour like a green or an orange, because you only need a tiny bit of that other if you're mixing orange, red, or green, blue
Mm.
to
And
mix.
another tip, if you've got a really light colour,
Mhm.
you can add tiny amounts of the dark. So you
Mm,
start with the light because that can make a big difference as well. So whichever is the stronger colour,
yeah,
you want to be adding little bits of that to the other.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that makes it, yeah. Because sometimes very, very little changes a colour
A
completely.
lot, doesn't it? Yeah. You've also reminded me of something else. Don't know whether this is true or not. Another controversial point, maybe. But when I was at college, I was told never to use black out of the tube,
Yeah.
but to always mix it with a brown and a blue.
Mm.
And then add in whatever tones that you see in the black. So I suppose behind me, some of this is almost black, but there's quite a lot of blue in there, and then there's some bits that are brown and even red in with the black. So I think when you start looking at things more and when you start observing, you'll see that black's not ever just black. There's a whole range of colours within.
And I did write a blog on black, ivory black, no, Mars black. And I got somebody got in touch with me and said that they'd always used ivory black,
Yeah,
which was a cooler black.
yeah,
Yeah. So when we say cooler, more bluey black. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And then um and he came across my blog and he used Mars black because he just needed something different.
yeah,
So I don't agree with the not using blacks. I think what's the point of manufacturing colours if you're never going to use them? But I think you need to just think about how you use it. And
yeah.
I've actually got one on, I've got a video on YouTube which is about painting a bald eagle. And I use black, but I add different colours into the black because what can happen with black, it can be flat because it absorbs all the light.
That's very
And
true.
if it's a absolute black, then it's not bouncing any light off it, which isn't very interesting.
Yeah,
And so by just adding colours into the black, you can actually change that.
yeah,
Yeah. But after saying that, I was taught not to use black as well. I came from the watercolour end. And so sometimes it's very, very hard. And I think not to do what you've been taught, isn't it?
yeah,
Um, and so I tend not to use black very much.
yeah. But I think you're kind of still following the rule of not using like, I think the point is don't use a really, really kind of dark, opaque black stroke.
Neat.
You want, yeah, you want to mix that in with other colours and really think about tones, don't you? I think that's the
Mm,
point of like the whole not mixing rule.
mm. I like adding a dark colour. You could say neutral colour, a black, a grey, a or a brown, something that, as well as like the primaries and stuff, something sometimes, although sometimes I might use something like a Payne's grey as a blue or
Mm,
that sort of thing. Yeah. I
mm.
think we're going slightly off. We're going into colour
Yeah.
mixing, really, aren't we? But that's because we like talking about colour. And you don't have to watch us. We could carry on talking forever. I remember going out with Sue Chatterton, you know, who I did the exhibition with, and we were sat in the pub, and she was saying to me, and this is when I was still quite early, so and we were talking about quinacridone, and she was like going, oh, and wait until you try all these different colours. And I quite like some of these synthetic colours that, the phthalos and
Yeah.
the quinacridones and all sorts of things. And we were talking about Daniel Smith's because it was watercolour and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And I'm like, just imagine listening to us because we were talking, what do you think of quinacridone magenta? What do you
Yeah.
It's just like,
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yes. Anyway, it can be a very exciting colour.
Yeah.
You're
And
interested.
there's lots that we haven't talked about as well. When you mentioned Daniel Smith, who does a range of like metallic paints, which are just
Oh,
gorgeous.
oh, yes.
You can
And things
get
like
that.
moonstone, and I can't remember the names of the colours, but that's what they
Yeah.
sort of have these beautiful
I
names.
know the names of the
Really
colours.
desaturated, but like, yeah, they've got sheens in them. And
Yeah. Yeah.
or granulating. We could do a whole podcast on granulation.
Yeah.
Do
Right.
you get much granulation in oils?
No, I don't think you do. No.
Oh,
No.
that's a definite topic then.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to write that down actually, because you don't get. That's really interesting. Because I thought that was a pigment feature.
Yeah.
Must be the oil
Maybe.
that's doing it.
Maybe. I'll have to have a look into it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So on that note, and the idea of a new podcast, and shall we get going?
Yes, yeah, it's lovely to catch up and hope everybody enjoyed it.
Hmm. Yeah. And I'm just going to say bye for now.
Yeah. See you next week.